Today, we're going to crack open a piece of tech you use literally every day, your car. And what we're going to find is that it has this hidden computer network that makes it, well, surprisingly easy to hack.
Yeah, let's just jump right in with this quote from a professional car hacker. I mean, listen to that. I could control whether the car went forward or backward right from my laptop. This isn't science fiction, folks. This is a real thing, and it points to a massive vulnerability in the car sitting in your driveway right now. So, how did we even get here? I mean, how did our cars go from being these simple mechanical things to complex, hackable computers? The whole story really starts with what's under the hood, or rather, what's not under the hood anymore.
Okay, so think back to older cars. They were almost all mechanical, right? If you wanted to add a cool new feature, say power windows, you had to add more physical wires. You ended up with this giant, heavy bundle of wires called a harness, and it got super complex and expensive. So engineers had a better idea. What if we stopped thinking of a car as just a machine and started thinking of it as a computer on wheels? All right, so if your car is a computer, all its different parts need to talk to each other. They needed a central nervous system for the car. And the system they came up with, it was brilliant for the time. But it was designed with one single critical flaw that hackers are now exploiting every single day. It's called the CAN bus. Now, the easiest way to think of it is like a simple two-wire party line for your car. Seriously, your engine, your brakes, your airbags, even your radio, they all just shout out messages for every other part to hear. The whole thing was built on this one core principle: absolute trust. Any message that gets sent on this network is just assumed to be legit. And that idea of absolute trust, well, that's where the problem is. Think about it this way. There's no bouncer at the door of this party. Nobody is checking IDs. The network has zero way to verify who is sending a message. And that means if you can get onto that network, you can pretend to be the brakes, or the engine, or the key. And the car will just do what you say. No questions asked. Okay, so that leads to the obvious question, right? How does an attacker actually get onto this super trusting, totally unsecured network? Well, it turns out there are two main ways they get in. One is physical, and the other is wireless. So the first way in is that little plug under your dashboard, the OBD2 port. You know, the one your mechanic plugs their computer into. That's a direct line to the CAN bus. But honestly, the attacks that are way more frightening are the ones that happen wirelessly. And a recent wave of high-tech thefts shows just how scary this can be. And this brings us to a question that sounds, well, completely absurd, but it's a real thing. How can a JBL speaker steal a Toyota? Believe it or not, this is the true story of a pretty sophisticated hacking device that was being sold on the dark web, designed specifically to exploit that trust we were just talking about. So here's how this crazy attack works. Thieves use this device that's disguised to look just like a Bluetooth speaker. They pop open a headlight to get to some exposed wires for the CAN bus. They plug the speaker in, and it starts injecting fake messages onto that network, basically screaming, "Hey everyone, a valid key is here." And because the CAN bus has no security, it just believes it. The doors unlock, the engine starts, and the car is just gone. In minutes. No broken glass, no alarm, nothing. Yeah, this kind of vulnerability has kicked off this constant invisible arms race. On one side, you have the car manufacturers who are desperately trying to plug these holes. And on the other side, you've got this new generation of really sophisticated high-tech criminals. You've got the defenders, right? The security engineers at places like Tesla and BMW. They're running bug bounty programs where they actually pay white hat or ethical hackers to find these flaws before the bad guys do. They're also trying to develop newer, more secure networks. But the attackers, they're just as smart. They're buying these ready-made hacking devices off the dark web that take zero technical skill to use, and they're constantly checking to see if a vulnerability found in one car also works on another. Now look, while all these engineers are out there fighting this bigger war, it doesn't mean you're totally helpless. There are actually some really simple, really effective things you can do to protect your own car from these kinds of attacks. Honestly, when it comes to this stuff, just being aware is your best defense. Like, if you press your key fob and nothing happens, don't just brush it off. A thief could be nearby using a jammer to block the signal. And always, always double check that your doors are actually locked. For those keyless entry fobs, get one of those signal-blocking Faraday pouches. They're cheap and they stop these from amplifying your key's signal. And just remember, every cool new smart feature is another potential door for an attacker to try and open. And, you know, all of this really leads to this fundamental question that we're all going to have to face. We all want our cars to be smarter, more connected, more convenient. But every single layer of that convenience adds complexity and it adds risk. So it leaves us with this really critical trade-off to think about. The more we ask our cars to do for us, the more doors we might be accidentally opening for someone else.